Marcus Aurelius said, "What we do in life echoes through eternity." What is your life echoing through eternity? Welcome to Echoes Through Eternity with Dr. Jeffrey Skinner. Our mission is to inspire, engage, and encourage leaders from across the globe to plant missional churches and be servant leaders. So join us and hear the stories of servant leaders reverberating lives as God echoes them through eternity. Brought to you by Missional Church Planting and Leadership Development and Dynamic Church Planting International.
Welcome into Echoes Through Eternity. I am your host, Dr. Jeffrey D. Skinner. What is God echoing through your life today? Well, folks, I am very appreciative of you joining us today. I'm excited about our guest today. We have Andy Brightbill in the studio with us. Andy is a director of residency and church planting for 12 Stone Church. If you don't know what 12 Stone Church is or who they are, I would encourage you to just search them on the web. They are a huge church, mega church here in the Atlanta area. And that's where I attend most Sundays on Sunday morning. And they're just around, they've got a Brazelton campus around the corner from my house here. And they're opening a brand new campus in about 5 weeks in Jackson County, which is a county very close to here as well. And they are just exploding in growth. One of the pastors announced this past Sunday, they added 1,500 people per Sunday this summer. That is unheard of during summer. If you know anything about churches, you decrease in the summer. You're begging people. You start counting roaches and flies as part of the attendance on Sunday morning just to keep your numbers up and make yourself feel good. But it is almost unheard of for our church to add numbers during the summertime. And then the week before last, they had their largest attendance ever, excluding Easter and Christmas. And those are obviously two large Sundays. But right now we want to talk about Andy and his role at 12 Stone, some of his experiences in ministry. And so I'm going to toss it over to him and welcome in, Andy.
Jeff, thanks so much for having me, man. Excited to be here.
That's fantastic. So tell us a little bit about what you do. So as the director of residency and church planting, tell us a little bit about what that is.
Yeah, absolutely. So we've had a residency program at 12 Stone for a little over 20 years. And our heart in that really is to see people who are called to ministry coached and developed to, first of all, steward their gifts, talents, and abilities to their fullest extent, but also to be able to fulfill that calling for a lifetime. So we offer side-by-side coaching and development for people traditionally post-college that are called to be pastors in the local church. So we have 10 different tracks that we help equip people with in spiritual formation, children's ministry, student ministry, worship, some other areas as well. And then we provide side-by-side coaching and development, both in what they're doing and then in who they're becoming over the course of 2 years. So we've got 30 residents currently in our program right now.
Wow, 30. So do y'all have housing for them? Y'all just have volunteers within the church that keep them?
We do. There are some volunteers from the church that help, and we really find that that's most effective. It helps keep the vision for the program in the congregation, but it also serves developmentally for those residents. You know, Jeff, I'm sure you're well aware, it's a lot of times there's a temptation to win at church at the cost of what you do at home. And having residents learn how to live inside of a host home and function well there really equips them to say, listen, the most important ministry you're ever going to have is the one you have at home. So it really serves as a good reminder for that.
That's awesome. I love that. I love that concept. Not necessarily exactly the same thing, but I had the opportunity when I was in college. We traveled with a men's chorus and we went over into the England and Scotland area and we stayed in homes of the people. And that was only for 2 weeks. I don't know how long the residency program is, but it was just a blessing to us to understand that culture as opposed to us just kind of entering in and staying separate from it. We entered into their culture and became a part. And it was just so much more organic just within that 2 weeks. I can't imagine what it is. What is it? A 2-year residency, 1 year residency, 2 years. Okay.
Yeah.
So I can't imagine. I love that concept of 12 Stone that they give back. That is one of the things I love about the 12 Stone Church. And I've never been a part of a mega church before as a church planting pastor. I've always pastored. I'm in a season of receiving right now and really growing myself. And 12 Stone has been a large part of that experience, just watching how they do things. And one of the things that I'm most impressed with is their humility. A lot of churches want to get out there and kind of stand in the community and say, look at us, look how we're doing it. We're so great and wonderful. 12 Stone doesn't do that. I was shocked just a few weeks ago. Jason Berry, one of your, I guess your co-pastor at this point. It was the Sunday after Roe v. Wade. And regardless of where people stood after Roe v. Wade was voted down or whatever they call that. It was that Sunday after, and there was a lot of angst on the people who were for it, and there was lots of celebration for people who were against it and who were happy that it had been gone, had been vacated. I heard a lot of spiking the football and things like that in various corners, but your pastor stood up and was so gracious in his response, and he said, "Look," he said, yes, we are happy. We have prayed for this. This is a wonderful moment for us. But let's look at all the things that we do that we need to do now as a church to support this. We don't just celebrate and walk away, but now we're involved, and here's how we're involved in the community. And just listed, I mean, it took him 10 minutes to list all the things that 12 Stone does within the community to support women, to support mothers and pregnancy, those who have unplanned pregnancies and even planned pregnancies, and abused women, and the list went on and on and on. And one of the things I've always asked my congregation and asked myself when I was planting a church is, if we were gone tomorrow, would we be missed? And as I sat there, absolutely, 12 Stone would be missed. They would leave a hole within the community wherever they are. It's just one of the things I really appreciate about 12 Stone, and the fact that you're investing and taking the time to invest in people in a residency program. In my denomination, Church of Nazarene, and we've just really began to learn that concept here in the last few years. We've just developed a mentoring program for our young pastors. And I look back on that and I scratch my head and I'm like, why did it take us 125 years to figure out that a pastor needs to be mentored, But it did. And, I guess we can't look back and complain about where we've been. It doesn't do any good. We just learn from our mistakes and move on from there. Mm-hmm. What would you say your personal leadership philosophy when you're looking for leaders and residents and things like that? What is it that you look for in those residents as far as it relates to your personal leadership philosophy?
Yeah, I want a clear call to local church ministry, and that's part of what our residency program is.
Okay,
that's not minimizing people who are called to leadership in other facets of kingdom life, whether it's marketplace and that kind of ministry or nonprofit work. But we want to make sure that someone is called to local church ministry, and then we want to see that they have. I think a lot of times, Jeff, you can look at hiring, and there's a couple ways to think about it. And here's one of the ways I like to think about it when I look for residents. The first one we look for is, there's something wrong with a person. And obviously we can all identify when there's something wrong with a person, go like, well, we probably shouldn't have that person on the team.
Right.
And then we go to the second one, and this is where a lot of people stop, where they go, well, there's nothing wrong with this person. And that's true for almost everybody, right? There's nothing wrong. But what we want is to look at someone and go, and this is the third category, there's something right with this person. In other words, there's something that God's given them. There's a gift, an ability, a talent, sometimes multiple, that you look at and go, man, if they can learn how to harness that gift and with humility have a kingdom mindset and a kingdom focus, they could make significant kingdom impact with a lifetime of local church pastoring. And so that's what we really look for, and that's what we lean into.
That's fantastic. So when you say something wrong with that person, obviously nobody's perfect. So how do you define something wrong?
I think you look at if there's some significant character issues, if there's some chronic behavior problems that show up from workplace to workplace. I would say this, Jeff, I think that's such a small segment of the population.
Right.
That, I think the real gist in those categories is to look at it and say, man, a lot of times we only do there's something wrong or there's nothing wrong.
Right. Right.
And it causes us to lower our standard, which ultimately waters down our culture.
Right.
And what we really want to see happen is go, man, we want people who are going to be culture carriers that move this forward. And to do that, we want the sharpest people we can get to help make that happen.
Yeah. Well, certainly I have, from what I've witnessed and just being in 12, around 12 Stone the last year, you guys do have some of the best of the best. And I've never heard a bad sermon there. That's the thing. I mean, most of the time you have people that, yeah, it was okay, or, and I mean, no matter what pastor it was, the campus pastor, whether it's a resident in training, I've not heard, I think the only one I haven't heard so far is the new pastor at Jackson County. I've heard him speak as far as just to the congregation, but not heard him preach. But I don't expect. There's no reason for me to expect that he's that he's any less quality than the others. You guys just do such a you've almost got it down to a science. And if you could write a book on selecting pastors and residents and that process there and patent it, you guys, you'd never have to take up another offering.
Well, we appreciate it. I think one of the things that I've loved most about being there, and we talked about just a second ago, is the high priority they place on healthy culture.
Right.
And one of my favorite leadership quotes from Peter Drucker, who's really the father of the modern leadership movement and management strategy. He said, "Culture eats strategy for breakfast."
Yeah, absolutely.
And even when I talk with residents and when they're done with our program and they go to leave at other churches, one of the things I tell them is you can find a job description that you love 100%, at a culture you love 50%, and hate going to work every day. But if you find a job description you love 50% and a culture you love 100%, there's not a day you're going to regret waking up to go to work at that place.
Oh, I love that. That's good.
I think a lot of times we get into the methodology of what we're doing. We get into the technicalities of what we're doing. But I think a lot of times it's our culture that we build that informs what we're calling people to.
Good.
And I can't take any credit for it, Jeff, but you referenced it there. I'm just so grateful for Pastor Kevin Myers and for Pastor Dan Ryland and those that have gone before who have just been so dogmatic on upholding the value and the health of our staff culture.
Yeah.
And that has been, more than anything, what's been transformative for me as a person working in that environment. But it's also, I think, what allows us to have consistency across campuses, across staff people, across years and decades. And even though some of our methodologies may change, it's the health of the culture that informs the impact that we have on the people that we're serving.
Good. I like that. So what would you say, just off the top of your head, or maybe just definitively, what are some of the marks of the culture there at 12 Stone?
Yeah, we have some defining statements that we use. We talk about being people. We talk about loving Jesus. We talk about believing the best. We talk about having fun while we work. I think what should be true of any culture is you can't define your culture in an aspirational nature.
Right.
You've got to define it in what you actually are and then go from there. But even in the way that you provide accountability for other people inside of your culture, the accountability aligns to what you're trying to build.
Right.
And I've heard people say it this way: culture isn't just what you say it is. It's what you celebrate, it's what you create, and it's what you allow. And so when you have intentionality in addressing those things, it really helps you be effective in building culture.
That's good. Fantastic. What would you say is probably the most challenging part of that ministry that you have there, of selecting and developing the residents and trying to shape that culture and all of that goes into that?
Yeah, I think I know we're no stranger to this. It's impacted every church. We're doing ministry in a very different world than we were 10 years ago.
Yeah.
And the challenge is always, how do we prepare? How do we serve who we currently have, but how do we also prepare to reach the next group of people?
Right.
And what's got to be true about who we are? And there's a large degree of intentionality and thoughtfulness that has to go into that.
Good. Yeah, it seems like every 2 years, the context in which you're ministering changes. And I've been in ministry for 20 years, And I remember talking about 10 years down the road, 15 years down the road. You can't make a 5-year plan hardly in ministry anymore because of the speed at which things are changing within our culture and the challenges that come your way. I mean, nobody saw 2 years ago. No one saw the pandemic heading our way and shutting down churches. And I have been highly impressed. My son was a part of the youth group over there at 12 Stone. He went to H12, I think is the name of the high school.
Yeah, that's
and
great.
So I mean, there was just hundreds of kids there prior to the pandemic. And I remember when he first went back after the pandemic, how few there were. And I remember thinking, wow, even 12 Stone was affected by the pandemic. And but you guys have rebounded. You have done such a good job of being and of rebounding from that, being intentional about re-engaging with the people and getting them back in there. And I mentioned on the opening that you guys had grown by 1,500 people each week this summer, and that was just dumbfounding to me. My jaw dropped when I heard that. It's just an amazing thing. You also talked about reaching that next generation. That was one of the things that your pastor, Jason Berry, one of your pastors, Jason Berry, talked about Sunday, was that Gen Z culture. He defined it a little more broadly than I've heard defined before as 1995 to, I can't remember what it was, but usually 2000. Okay, 1995 to 2000. Oh, is that what it was? 95 to 2000?
I think 2007.
Okay, all right. Yeah, I had always heard millennials defined as 2000 to like 2000. I can't remember 2000 like to 2020 or something like that. So, but anyway, those are no scientific boundaries there, but it was still very interesting the stuff that he got from that, and the fact that the Gen Z desperately wants to please their parents. They desperately want the involvement of the next generation in their lives, and those are things that people assume that they don't want. And I think part of it as a result of that, of the pandemic, where they were so isolated for a while there, and they got pulled away. But I love, again, that 12 Stone is already looking to prepare that next generation. In fact, the sermons that I heard have come from the children's Bible, which I thought was just what a great idea, because one of the things they teach you in ministry preparation is make sure that your fifth grader can tell you what your sermon was about when you're done. And so what better way than to preach from the children's Bible to be sure that the children are comprehending and understanding what's going on there.
We wanted to do everything we could to really equip families to be deeply involved in the discipleship process. And, we get those kids for an hour or two a week, but they're with their families for significantly more time than that. So we thought if we can help walk parents through intentional, faith-based, biblically based conversations around the dinner table and the carpool line, wherever you are, man, that's just such a win to strengthen families inside the congregation.
Yeah, absolutely. I remember hearing in seminary that very little spiritual formation takes place on Sunday morning. And we, in other words, the pastor overestimates his impact on the congregation. And it makes sense because we get them for 30 minutes or an hour a week if we're lucky. Yeah. And now, I mean, people call themselves a regular attender if they're there twice a month. And growing up, a regular attender was someone that was there every Sunday. It wasn't so occasionally missed, but I remember the Strive for 5 for, you got a gold star when you were there for, 3 months in a row, and another star if you were there for a year. And, we had an older gentleman that stood up in our congregation, and he had never missed a Sunday for 35 years of church. So who can say that today? I can't say that, but it is amazing how, and again, it's just a testament to how our culture is shifting and the amount of deconstruction has taken place within culture overall.
Go ahead. That's always the tension. That's always the tension in church leadership, where, I would love for everybody to come every Sunday, and do that every Sunday for 35 years. That'd be awesome. I'd love for that to be true, but I don't know that it's gonna be.
Right.
And I think part of I think churches that have rebounded well, because let's be honest, the pandemic affected everybody. I don't care what size your church is. I don't care how well resourced or under resourced it might be. We all lost people, and not a few.
Right.
Significant. I mean, most are 50% what they were prior to, and that's every church.
Right.
And so I think part of moving forward is accepting the reality. And I don't mean this to be cold, but those people, they're not coming back.
Right.
And we can sit here and hope they do, but we can't allow that to be our ministry strategy moving forward.
Yeah.
Hoping people return, because there are people that God still called every church to reach.
Right.
In their community, and we can't simultaneously strive to reach new people while still mourning and hoping that the old people all return.
Yeah, that's good. I like that.
In a building, on a hill, in your home, on a beach, in real life, and online. Multitudes are coming to Christ around the world, but there is a shortage of healthy churches. On every continent of the world, Christians like you have learned exactly how to start a church with DCPI's free, step-by-step training based on God's Word to equip you to reach your community with the good news of Jesus Christ. Dynamic Church Planting International wants to come alongside you or your organization for free. No strings attached, no hidden cost, no subscriptions. We equip you absolutely free. Our mission is to equip servant leaders to plant 5 million churches. Go to dcpi.org for more details. That's dcpi.org.
So how does 12 Stone, because you're such a large church, how do you balance the attractional versus missional?
Yeah. Well, I love what you were talking about earlier. What we really want to do is equip our people to reach the people that are inside of their sphere of influence. And I think we could have this as a really deep and very involved conversation on church models,
Right.
and moving out of an attractional model into whatever it is the next iteration of the predominant church model is going to be like. I think it's still important to say our heart is to always do things with excellence.
Right.
But the attractional church model worked well in a culture where there were shared values both inside and outside of the church, where we could all agree these were the values that mattered most. And today, our culture has diverged so much that the things that the church values and the things that the world values aren't the same values.
Yeah.
Or they're using the same word, but they just have a very different dictionary they're using to define that word. And so, part of it is saying we want to do things with excellence. We want to love people well. We want to serve people well. But what we really would love to do is equip all of our people to make as big an impact for the kingdom and their sphere of influence as they possibly can.
So the people become the mission and the outreach of the church. Yeah. It's not necessarily a church-driven outreach that you see. So it's not an outreach program, so to speak. The strategy is the people.
Yeah, I remember. I think it was Pastor Jason who had said this in a staff meeting one time. He said, "I don't care one bit about if a headline in a newspaper says 12 Stone Church does this or that." He said, "But what I do want to see is a headline that says local man serves community, and as a sub point in that article, it just says he happens to attend 12 Stone Church."
Yeah, that's good. I like that. That goes back to that humility as a church. I mean, you're not seeking headlines. You're simply seeking to impact your community.
Well, and the kingdom is so much bigger than 12 Stone.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
And so we're going to do whatever we can to serve our little slice of the world that God's called us to impact. But when we can equip people, even inside the residency, if we can equip residents and they can go out and do that in churches all over the country, man, it moves the kingdom forward. Because the most important thing is people know Jesus.
Right.
Not people know 12 Stone or any other church.
Yeah. Good. So I want to transition now from residency to church planting. So you guys, how many, I wasn't even aware until I spoke to you that that 12 Stone planted churches outside of the 12 Stone brand. So how do you guys go about, what is that process for you guys?
Yeah, that's a brand new endeavor for us. It's about 2 years old. We started this in January of 2020. And I know that date probably rings a bell for a lot of people because it was just 2 months after that, in March of 2020, that the pandemic hit. And we all scrambled and figured out, what do we do here with this and how do we make this happen and move this forward? But we realized that we have, like all churches do, we have a unique style, we have a unique message, we have a unique place and space that we fill in the world, but God has called us to reach as many people as possible. And so in doing that, we realized there are pastors, future pastors, church planners that have a vision to serve and reach a community that may not be exactly what ours is like in every detail, but that we believe in and we want to resource and we want to champion. And so let's help these guys get their churches up and off the ground. So we've been able to help plant 3 churches now, one in Huntsville, Alabama, one in Colorado Springs, Colorado, one in the suburbs of Indianapolis. Our 4th will launch in the next handful of months in Helena, Montana. And we're looking to continue to expand that just to see more people reached with the gospel.
That's awesome. And so is it a 12 Stone? Is it a system that you have that you plug them into and phase 1, phase 2, phase 3?
We have a strategic relationship with ARC, which is
Gotcha.
Association of Related
ARC.
Churches out of Birmingham.
Okay.
And so we have a good relationship with them. And then we have some other relationships inside of our denomination, along with the Wesleyan Investment Foundation.
Okay.
And so ARC does a lot of the training. 12 Stone does a lot of the vetting. But then the other thing that we offer for them is a family.
Gotcha.
There's a place to belong. You know, we feel like I've said this a couple of times here. The world is shifting. Culture is shifting.
Right.
And to do ministry in that culture oftentimes can feel isolating, can feel alone, can sometimes even feel like you're coming under attack. And so when you can have alignment with other churches that are believing the same thing that you're believing and have a commitment to biblical orthodoxy while simultaneously wanting to serve all people from all spectrums inside of a community, man, that to be able to do that together with people and to share ideas, but also to just be a family and huddle together for safety every once in a while is really critical moving forward.
Yeah. So you say part of the family. So I don't think, probably a lot of people wouldn't know that 12 Stone is a part of a denomination. So what denomination you guys part of?
Yeah, we're a Wesleyan church.
Wesleyan. Good.
Yeah.
Yep, I knew that, but I just want for our listeners out there, wanted them to know. And you don't necessarily broadcast that. I don't know that it's necessary to be broadcast, but it is just good to know. I've heard a lot of people say, when non-denominational churches are growing, you guys are not a non-denominational church. You have a strict set of beliefs, Wesleyan theology from framework from which you operate and preach the gospel, which is good. I'm Church of the Nazarene. We are cousins to the Wesleyans. Dr. Berry, or Mark Berry, is the brother to Dan Berry. And Mark Berry was the district superintendent, my district superintendent when I was serving in Alabama. And then Dan Berry is the father of Jason Berry. So I've got a tangential connection there. I have watched Jason grow and mature over the years. And man, he is so good now. I mean, like this is not the same guy. And that's a testament to the mentorship of Kevin and Dan and others at 12 Stone, that whole culture that you mentioned there. So do these people, or you said you guys do the vetting, so do you guys have an application process for these people that want to apply? How do you guys advertise that?
It's more word of mouth and people just getting connected to me.
Okay.
And here's what we're looking for people in that capacity. We want people who have 5 to 10 years of ministry experience.
Mm-hmm.
You know, Jeff, I'm sure you're well aware, you're planning a church. That's some hard work. There's some grit. There's some grind that's there. And so we want people to have walked in their calling for a while.
Yeah.
Where they've had some experiences that have allowed them to anchor, because, for all pastors, for anybody in ministry, it can be hard work. And if we're all going to be real honest, the temptation comes for everybody to go, maybe doing like landscaping as a career
Right.
I can plant that shrub and then I leave it at the end of the day and it stays
Yeah.
exactly where I put it.
Yeah.
And it doesn't call, it doesn't do
Right.
anything after that. So we want them to be anchored in their calling. And so that's why we want that 5 to 10 years. We want them to have led something that's grown. That sounds kind of like a no-brainer.
Right.
But if someone has never led something that's grown and then we're going to let them go plant a church, it would seem that the track record would indicate you may not have a good time getting that church up and off the ground.
Right.
And then the third thing is this, and it serves two purposes, is that we feel that this individual has the capacity to raise significant funds. And that's true on two accounts. Number one, again, I'm sure you're well aware, when you plant a church, you need money.
Yeah. Unfortunately.
Yeah, unfortunately, but it's hard to do a lot of things without it. But I think even more important than the actual tangible need of funds is this. If a person is able to cast a compelling enough vision that someone will give financially to it, that serves as a really good indication that they can also cast a compelling enough vision that people want to partner with them and help get that church up and off the ground. And so yeah, we need them to be able to raise money, but what we need more than that is for them to have a vision that's compelling enough that people want to join the team and partner with them in what God is going to do through the birthing of that new church.
Wow. Yeah, I had never thought about fundraising from that perspective, that, they have be able to raise significant funds, but really what that is a pointer to the fact that they are able to cast a compelling vision. Which is one that people want to join. Lots of people can cast a vision. There's a fine line between inspiration and direction, and I think a church planter really has to be 80% inspirational when they talk and cast that vision, because it's volunteers. I remember the first church I planted. I had been running a business for 15 years. And I thought, well, hey, I'm an entrepreneur. How hard is it to plant a church? And the first thing you'd think, well, this is a no brainer that you're going to be running volunteers, but you get into the church and you're thinking, oh yeah, you know what? I'm not their boss. I can't fire them if they don't do what they're supposed to do.
Right. It's really unique about a church planter is it's almost like you're exercising two very different skill sets, because there's one skill set you need that happens on the front end in building that launch team and casting that vision, in making inroads into the community and building those relationships. And then that's what is happening all the way up until your very first Sunday that you launch. But then you launch that first Sunday and now you're a church. So now you need all the skill sets and the abilities and the capacities that any traditional pastor would need.
Yeah.
And so, it's saying, man, if I'm going to plant a church, I've got to be able to have that entrepreneurial side, but I've also got to have that shepherding, pastoring, leadership side that gets me in and goes, okay, now these people are here. How are we going to move them forward? And what are we going to do to reach more people? And how are we going to help this church grow moving forward? And so it's almost like this duality that sits inside each planter to really be successful in getting that church up and off the ground.
Yeah, that's good. That's really good. Well, last question for you, Andy. And again, appreciate you being here today. How do you guys coach your people through failure?
Yeah. I think part of it is, first of all, normalizing it. I think perfection, clearly it's a myth. When you hear somebody say that, everybody goes, well, yeah, because nobody's perfect, which means that failure is going to be a regular part of everyone's experience. And so one of the mantras that we've adopted at 12 Stone is to say what we're after is progress, not perfection. And it says, listen, we're all going to try some things that we look back on. I mean, it's every pastor I've ever talked to. This is true of every one of them, where you get some experience behind a decision you made 10 years ago and you go, why on earth did I think that would work? Like, why on earth did I think that was the thing that was going to really get some people here. Or that was the thing that was really going to fix our discipleship process. Or that was the thing that was really going to help our children's ministry grow. But part of it is to go, you know what? I tried it. And one of the other things we talk about is, man, I would much rather coach aggressive mistakes than passive mistakes.
Yeah.
People that are trying to take risks to move the kingdom forward, I think are far better than people. It's the parable of the talents, right?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
You know, I mean, the person that got 5, they doubled it. The person that got 2, they doubled it. The person that got 1 dug a hole in the backyard, put the talent in the hole. And when the master returned, he dug the hole up and gave the talent back. And the response from the master was, "You wicked, lazy servant."
Yeah.
And so part of it, again, is just normalizing that if you're going to be a risk taker, that's going to inherently involve failure.
Well, I told you a story. I said it was the last question. This is the last question. Is there anything else that you would want people to know before we're done?
Oh gosh, there's so much. I think that if I were going to boil it down to one thing, I think it's just simply this: it is expand a viewpoint to have a kingdom mindset and realize we're all in this together. We're all in this together. And with culture shifting the way it is, the last thing that we need is churches taking down other churches
Oh,
and
yeah.
pastors undercutting other pastors. We need each other. And we've got to support each other and encourage each other and challenge each other in the best possible ways because the kingdom is going to move forward. But we all need each other to make it happen. And regardless of what your church is like and what your culture is like and what your unique expression is like inside of that, all are valuable voices in the kingdom. And we just want to keep things moving forward.
That's good, Andy. Appreciate that so much. Well, blessings upon you and your family and your continued efforts there. I look forward to continue watching 12 Stone and its kingdom impact, its impact on the communities around it, and blessings on your family as well. Thank you
Thanks,
very
Jeff.
much.
Absolutely. Good being with you.
Good being with you. Bye-bye.